Dr. Sheila Nambiar is a certified as a fitness and lifestyle consultant from NAFC. She founded the program Training for Life TFL, which she runs through her hospital, Parvati Medical Center in Ooty, and through the TFL Fitness Studio in Chennai. She practices as a consistent OBGYN and managing partner at Parvati Medical Center, Ooty. And she has also been using lifestyle medicine, it's very impressive, as a form of preventive care since last 21 years. She is on council of Global Consortium, the True Health initiative that promotes lifestyle medicine. And her subject expertise on fitness, food, lifestyle takes her to conferences, book readings, gatherings all over the country and overseas. I think over to ma'am, we all are eagerly waiting for your pulse of wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you to IDEC and the organizers. Could I share my screen, please? I don't have a share screen.
At the bottom, you'll see an arrow. You can share from there.
Now I can. Now I can.
At the bottom of the platform.
Yeah, now I can. Now I can.
At the bottom of the platform.
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah. Just make it full slide. Just make it full slide. There is a screen at the bottom. Right at the bottom, you'll see. There is a screen at the bottom. No. Right at the bottom, you'll see. You'll have to go to the yes next to that. On the right side of.
Let's start. Sorry.
No.
This is okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a full screen.
Thank you, organizers of IDEC, for inviting me. It is my great pleasure to talk to you about the very...
Can't hear you.
No, we can hear.
Okay, so the question of which comes first, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
You're not audible.
No, we can hear her.
She's audible.
Sanjay, we can hear her.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
So which comes first, fat loss or muscle gain? Frankly, it depends on both the training methods and the nutritional strategies that are being used. So various training methods, depending on how much of cardio you use, what kind of strength training, what kind of cardio, such as HIIT or low intensity, long duration cardio, all of that plays a very important role in whether you lose fat first or you start to build muscle. Nutritional strategies such as how much of protein you include in your diet is important to determine fat loss or muscle gain. So the principle of specificity of training states that to develop a specific fitness component, such as increase in muscle mass, for instance, activities must be performed to develop the various body parts or body systems that address that particular fitness component. So participating in only cardio will not necessarily increase muscle mass. If it is fat loss you want, increasing your cardio to increase calorific expenditure and nutritional strategies to decrease calorific intake is what is required. But if it is muscle gain you want, increasing the intake of protein per meal and resistance training to build muscle is what you want. So are fat loss and muscle gain mutually exclusive, since these two strategies seem to be completely contradictory? Not if the training strategy and nutrition favors body recomposition, whereby you can lose muscle and gain, lose fat and gain muscle concomitantly. We may need to focus on fat loss alone for very overweight or obese individuals beginning to exercise. Focusing only on fat loss with extremely low calorie diets and long durations of cardio is detrimental in the long run. And preserving muscle mass, if not building it, is important even for overweight and obese individuals. So muscle is extremely important, as we all know. Besides the improving functionality of the body, it is a principal reservoir for amino acids for vital tissues. It's important for activities of daily living as well as exercise. It's a precursor for gluconeogenesis, maintaining protein balance for other tissues like skin, brain, liver, etc. following breakdown. It provides the amino acids for wound healing in the absence of adequate nutritional intake. Muscle strength and functionality is important for recovery from chronic disease and acute disease as well. And quantity also plays a role in chronic disease, recovery from chronic diseases. So in this very interesting study, the interesting paper, what was found was that across the full range, higher muscle mass relative to body size is associated with better insulin sensitivity and lower risk of prediabetes. Further research, of course, is needed to examine the effects of appropriate exercise interventions designed to increase muscle mass on the incidence of diabetes. So in this talk, I'm going to cover what is body recomposition. What are the benefits? Is body recomposition possible? And if so, for whom? What are the factors influencing recomposition and some practical takeaways? So what is body recomposition? It is nothing but altering the ratio between the fat mass and the fat-free mass or muscle. It is an adaptive phenomenon by which the fat stores in the body are decreased and there is an increased accrual of muscle mass. Some health benefits of this body recomposition will be the improved cardiometabolic health, insulin resistance, and a reduced incidence of metabolic syndrome. There is an improvement in athletic performance like strength gain, speed, intensity, and various other pillars of fitness. Improvement in physique, giving you a leaner body, better functionality with balance, more strength, and better ability to perform activities of daily living. There is a role that, very important role that muscle plays in obesity and the prevention of obesity thereof. Obesity, as we know, is the energy balance or energy imbalance over a prolonged period of time. And energy expenditure comes about in many ways, through REE or the resting energy expenditure, through the thermic effect of food, and energy expenditure related to activity and exercise. Among these, the REE or the resting energy expenditure is responsible for the largest component of energy expenditure on a day-to-day basis. So if we have, in order to have a larger amount of REE, it is largely dependent on the quantity of muscle that individuals carry. The resting metabolic rate or energy requirement for organs cannot vary greatly due to the relative constant tissue turnover. However, varying our muscle mass, the amount of muscle that we carry, is possible, and the energy that is released or spent per day as a result of protein synthesis can vary from as much as 484 calories per day in young bodybuilders to as little as 124 calories in frail old women. Now, it is commonly thought that body recomposition or the switch or the decrease in fat mass along with increase in muscle mass is possible more in untrained individuals or individuals not accustomed to resistance training or obese and overweight individuals. However, trainers, when they manipulate the resistance training programs by altering what is called intensity, volume, exercise selection, etc., we can actually see body recomposition. So some of the methods that are used for body recomposition, we know that aerobic training is used to decrease fat mass and strength training to increase or build muscle. But concurrent training, which is a combination of aerobic training and resistance training, can be seen as an effective approach for body recomposition. How does resistance training increase muscle mass? By manipulating the intensity, volume, and exercise selection, we can target specific muscles or groups of muscles in order to encourage hypertrophy of those muscles. The hypertrophy is actually produced by the increase in motor unit recruitment, leading to not hyperplasia, but hypertrophy of individual muscle cells. This works primarily on what is called as the overload principle. So hypertrophy of the muscle happens with what is called overload principle, which is nothing but challenging an individual muscle or a group of muscles beyond their current capacity. Muscle changes with alteration in tension on the muscle and from damage to the muscle cells. Repair and hypertrophy happens during the rest phase of the exercise, not during the actual exercise phase. Now, it has been seen that in highly trained athletes, these subjects gained about 1.9 kgs of muscle but did not demonstrate any loss in fat mass in an 8-week training period. Many high-level athletes take time away from their sport to what we call as detrain, and then they come back in order to accomplish some amount of body recomposition. This temporary reduction in the training status and body composition is produced during the detraining, and it enables the body to develop what is called as increasing the muscle mass and decreasing the fat percentage when they start to train again. On the other hand, in another study by Zemsky et al., gain in muscle in elite rugby players was seen about 1.8 kgs and a loss of muscle mass of 2.2 after detraining for 4 weeks. So there is individual variation, as you can see, and it's possibly because of genetics, which have not been accounted for in these studies. In physique competitors, that is in bodybuilders, what they do is build as much muscle as possible in the off season by increasing the calorie intake and increasing the exercise load or the amount of weight that they lift. Then they start to cut calories during the season to reduce the fat percentage. Now, because of this extreme calorie restriction, it puts a lot of demands, physical demands on the body, altering hormones, sleep, producing stress, etc. So this is not recommended on a day-to-day basis for regular recreational exercisers. In recreational exercisers, it is easier to achieve what is called as body recomposition compared to highly trained athletes. In a study by Cribb et al., there was a significant gain in fat-free mass or muscle of about 5 kgs and a reduction in the fat mass of 1.4 in a group of recreationally trained individuals when they train for a period of about just 10 weeks. Well-trained athletes, as we've already seen, they already have very little fat mass. So achieving an even lower fat mass and building muscle becomes quite difficult unless they go into the detraining and then they come back to train again. There are different training methods that are also used in order to produce body recomposition. In this study by Alcatraz et al., there were 2 groups of participants that performed 8 weeks of either a high resistance circuit which is HRC, or a traditional strength training, which is TST. Now, both groups performed not more than 3 to 6 supervised sets of exercises. So 3 compound exercises and 3 isolation exercises using a 6 rep max. And I will explain all of these. The high resistance circuit used only a 35-second rest or recovery between the sets and performed the exercises in a circuit. Whereas the TST group took a 3-minute rest between each set of each exercise before moving on to the next one. It was found that only the high resistance group significantly decreased fat mass by 1.5, whereas the TST group did not. Both increased muscle mass, however, 1.5 and 1.2 kgs respectively. In another 6-week study of recreational exercises, male, low volume, high frequency training, which is 4 times a week, but using less weight and more number of sets. The other group had a high volume, low frequency, where the number of sets, the amount of weight that was lifted was much more, but done much less frequently, only 2 days a week. These 2 groups were compared. There was no alteration in diet, but neither of the studies had a diet recall. Both groups gained a significant amount of muscle, but the reduction in fat was statistically significant only in the high volume, low frequency group, about 2.4 kgs compared to only 0.6 kgs in the high volume, low frequency group. So talking about compound versus simple exercises, compound versus simple or isolation exercises, the compound exercises like the deadlift, squat, push-up, and plank, they call into play more than one muscle. And therefore, they also increase your cardiovascular endurance when you're performing these exercises. In comparison, the isolation exercises like your bicep curls, tricep extensions, and crunches, they only call into play single muscles or pairs of muscles. And so the cardiovascular endurance or the level of exertion on the cardiovascular system is much less, which could also be the reason why people using compound exercises or studies in which compound exercises were used, they tended to burn more calories and lower the fat mass much more than the ones that use simple exercises, isolation exercises. Nutrition is also an important factor in altering the body composition. The traditional advice states that when you go on a hypercaloric, you need to go on a hypercaloric diet in order to build muscle, in addition to resistance training, and go on a hypocaloric diet to burn fat. But we have found that significant gain in muscle mass and reduction in fat mass using a hypercaloric diet, but provided that the hypercaloric diet had an increase in protein. So very high protein diets of about 3.5 grams versus normal, which is approximately 2.3 in well-trained men and women using heavy resistance training, where they did 5 days a week of split routines for 8 weeks. Both groups gained a lot of muscle, 1.5 kgs, whereas a high protein group, while consuming an additional 400 calories, lost more fat mass than the normal protein group. So despite consuming more calories, the people who had the higher protein, consumed the higher protein, tended to they actually lost more fat than the ones that had a lower calorific intake. Now, this inter-individual variability could be also because of genetics. Other factors influence muscle gains and fat loss. So it's not just the training, it's not only nutrition. We found that sleep, both the quantity as well as the quality of the sleep, the amount of stress and the management of stress, hormones like ghrelin, insulin, testosterone, and of course your basal metabolic rate or how much muscle you're already carrying, all influence the amount of fat that you lose and the amount of muscle that one can gain. In the study by Wang et al., where the sleep deprivation was compared to people who were not sleep deprived, 1 hour of sleep restriction 5 times a week, the weight loss outcomes in overweight adults on similar diets. So both the groups had similar diets, but one group had an hour of sleep restriction 5 days a week, the other group did not. Both lost weight on the scale, that is about 3.2 kilos, but the sleep-restricted group lost more muscle mass than the well-slept group. Sleep-restricted group had higher levels of ghrelin, which possibly accounted for increase in their hunger and their prevention of the fat. Since they lost more of muscle and they did not lose as much of fat as possibly because of the hunger hormone ghrelin. Now, when we prescribe exercise, we use the acronym, the FIT principle, as many of you may know. Frequency of, what is the frequency of training that you're recommending? What is the intensity that needs to be recommended? The type of activity, and the type of activity needs to be determined and specified both for cardio as well as strength training. The amount of time that is spent depending on the various muscles that are addressed, whether it's a split routine or a whole body routine, and how long one does the cardio for. So basically we need 2 separate prescriptions for cardio and a separate prescription for strength training. The intensity of training is calculated using what is called as a 1 repetition max. So that's nothing but the maximum weight that you can lift for one particular exercise. And approximately 70% of your 1 repetition max would equate to you being able to lift that weight for about 12 repetitions. So people often ask, how much weight should I lift for 12 repetitions? It depends entirely on the individual and the individual's 1 rep max for that particular exercise. So a range anywhere between 50 to 90% of 1 repetition max using different number of sets and reps will challenge muscle hypertrophy. For example, in the deadlift, let's say that your 1 rep max is 50 kilos, then anywhere between 25 to 50 kilos using different sets, different number of repetitions will challenge muscle hypertrophy.
Ma'am, last one and a half.
Sure. Yeah. So for cardio, we can we need to differentiate between high intensity interval training and the low intensity cardio. Long duration cardio can deplete the muscle, but it may be preferable for beginners and overweight individuals, as we don't want them to start with high intensity interval training. More advanced exercises can do a shorter duration, higher intensity cardio. And in this paper by Keating, they compared the various forms of cardio on how much these various forms of cardio affect fat loss. And the results showed that it really didn't matter what kind of cardio you used, provided the calorific expenditure was comparable, whether it was sprint interval training or HIIT or MICT, which is moderate intensity training. The actual method didn't matter, provided that you burnt the same number of calories. So depending upon the fitness level and the training level of the individual, you can prescribe the required cardio. So the results of the study showed that interval training can be as effective as an alternative to longer duration cardio for fat loss. Although exercise may not be all that effective for fat loss, it certainly impacts fitness and health improvement. As such, all forms of exercise should be encouraged despite their relatively minimal contribution. Strength training is especially important for developing lean body mass, and HIIT appears to be more effective at reducing inflammation than long duration, lower intensity cardio. So we need to reframe the need for strength training and for body recomposition. We need to understand the importance of strength training and prioritize the need for strength training. Most people don't seem to see the importance of strength training. We need to dispel myths about bulking, which is very common, especially among women. We need to rethink the traditional recommendation of doing a lot of cardio. We need to recognize that strength training improves confidence in one's own body, preventing fear of falling, losing balance, and so on. Understanding that resistance training improves body intelligence and awareness, and defocus from just the weight on the scale and BMI to body recomposition. Putting it together, resistance training with body recomposition is possible, and that we do by concurrent training or using a combination and various permutations of both cardio as well as resistance training. Resistance training with the overload principle, at least 2 to 4 times a week for body recomposition, is advisable. High volume, low frequency training, where we don't necessarily need to train more than twice a week, seems to be more beneficial in body recomposition. High resistance circuit, where we have less rest between sets, can be used for better recomposition. Cardio of the right kind, 20 to 60 minutes depending upon the intensity, where low to moderate intensity for overweight beginners and HIIT or high intensity, shorter duration for more advanced individuals may be recommended. Nutritional implementations by increasing protein intake with every meal while keeping the calories on a slight deficit if required, not too much, because going on too much of a deficit can prevent building of muscle. And we need to, of course, include the other pillars of fitness, not to forget the other pillars like the flexibility, coordination, and so on. And sleep, stress, and nutrition are very, very important aspects to consider when you think about body recomposition, or for that matter, health and metabolism. Thank you so much for the patient hearing.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for such a crisp talk with covering all the points so well. I think Dr. Neeta has a question. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a question. Can HIIT be applied to resistance training? And if that happens, does it become cardio then?
Yes, it does. A very good question, Dr. Neeta. You can use HIIT. So that's what HRC is, high resistance circuits, where you do perform the exercise very quickly without too much of rest, maybe 30 seconds of rest between sets. You will also get the cardio benefits, cardiovascular benefits. So if you're short of time, using a HRC is very useful. You don't need to do cardio separately.
So you get the benefit of cardio as well as resistance training.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, because basically cardio is nothing but by increasing your cardiovascular, the rate, heart rate, and the breathing, it improves your cardiovascular endurance. Right. And when you do HRC, you will necessarily also increase your heart rate and breathing.
Right.
Thank you, ma'am. So I think there are no more questions in the chat box. Anyone else wants to ask any question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is that who's the right person? Is the gym guy equipped? We always see injuries happening. So should doctors in a big way also learn about exercise? So what is your message to all of us through this talk? Because
That's an excellent question. So we currently have the Indian Society of Lifestyle Medicine, of which I'm the president right now, and I encourage all physicians to try and incorporate lifestyle medicine, which is a board certification, internationally recognized board certification. And in the course, in the board certification, the physician is actually taught how to prescribe exercise. So, but we also collaborate with trainers who are equipped, dietitians who are equipped, health coaches, psychologists. It's a collaborative effort. So that's why lifestyle medicine is extremely important. And I request everybody present to consider visiting our website, the Indian Society of Lifestyle Medicine, and if possible, to join us.
Sheila, one more question. As a take-home message for our audiences, is any age bar for starting resistance training for the first time?
No, absolutely not, Neeta. In fact, there was a study done with 90-year-olds who started resistance training. Obviously, when you start at a much later age, you definitely need to be supervised by a very, very experienced trainer, consultant, and you also need to start slow. Because it is about the neuromuscular coordination. It's not just strength. So we need to actually train the body to be able to perform the exercises. So starting slow, less reps, less sets, and with proper guidance, you can start at any age. And there has been shown to be an increase in both muscle mass, of course, not to the extent if you start early, but there is increase in muscle mass and strength whenever you start a resistance training program, irrespective of age.
And what about the protein shake that the gym guys ask you to take before or after?
So yeah, unless you are incapable of consuming protein from your diet alone, which is possible with a very well-planned with nutritional support, you don't necessarily, I don't believe in protein shakes. Because many of them do have additives, and many have stevia and sweeteners, etc. So I think if we can try and include protein enough, even a plant-based protein, into every meal, that should suffice. And it doesn't necessarily have to be before a workout. It's post-workout that actually the repair happens. So if at all you're having a protein shake, it needs to be post, not before.
The most important problem when people start strength training is delayed onset muscle soreness, and that is the reason they give for not starting resistance training.
Yes.
How do you deal with it?
Well, what I tell them is not to stop, because it's when you stop and restart again that the delayed onset muscle soreness happens more. Of course, when each time you challenge the muscle, you will have some amount of soreness, but some things like taking a warm bath, stretching, even taking a supplement of magnesium seems to help delayed onset muscle soreness. But it is inevitable, because it is the micro tears in the muscles that actually cause the hypertrophy. So you will have some amount of soreness. So motivation is very important. Talking to the client, motivating them and telling them this is actually a sign that their muscle is growing. That seems to help them. When you tell them that, this is an indication that their muscle is growing, and to also tell them that not stopping, that doing it twice a week, continue consistently is important. So if they stop for a couple of weeks and come back, it's almost like detraining. And they come back and they start feeling the DOMS all the more severely again. You actually get used to DOMS once you start training.
All right.
Okay. I think we are done with such an interactive session. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you, IDEC, Neeta ma'am, Sanjay sir, Shilpa ma'am, everyone to make us a part of today's program. Best of luck for the conference ahead. Handing over to the organizers. Thank you.